and that's what it is. All right, let's bring on our first guest. As I said, both Staten Islanders, and they're here to talk about some of their projects going on. We have author Andy Mele and legendary performer and entertainer Len Carrie. Let's give it up for them.
Give it up.
What's up, fellas?
Hey,
How
how
are
you
you?
doing?
How you doing?
Good.
Doing good, Andy.
You
what's
mentioned
up,
Frank
buddy?
Vincent. I know him from the 50s.
Oh, really?
He's a drummer.
Because he used to play the drums.
And him and Joe Pesci had a duo.
But heck, they must have been really young back then, right?
Yes, they were. I remember in the 50s we had bands together. He was in a band. Joe Pesci played guitar in my band.
No way. That's cool. Now listen, what did I do to deserve this visit from you guys on my show? Both of you together.
I was born in Staten Island, so I guess I'm a Staten Islander. And all through my career and my lifetime, stories. I owned a nightclub. I was in show business. I had my own show. I produced shows for senior citizens with Andy. People always said, you have so many stories in your head, you should write a book. So Andy became a writer for the Staten Island Advance. Yep. We were partners. We used to produce shows throughout the 80s into the 90s for senior citizens. And
No book.
he talked me into writing a book. He wrote the book. Because I'm not a writer, but he sat down and listened to all my stories and put them in the book.
I knew Andy's family for a while, but then me and Andy got introduced like later on, after I knew his son for a while, and then we started doing the show together with all his books, being Yankee fans and all this stuff. So before the echoes fade, talk about this, Andy.
I was trying to come up with another idea for a book, and my son, Andrew, said to me, why don't you write about Lenny? I hadn't seen Lenny in about 35 years.
That long?
So, yeah, well, we were together in the 80s. We were doing shows for senior citizens. We were producing shows. So I said, you think he's still around? So he ran down a granddaughter, and I found him, and I called him on the phone, and he sounded, I mean, he was so articulate, and he has such recall. Tell you about things that happened 60 years ago, right, to the date, to the minute. So we got together and we spoke for a while, and then I said to him, listen, you want to do this or not? You really want to go ahead with it? And he said, yeah, but he said, you better type fast. I'm 90 years old. So I typed as fast as I could. We got the book done. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy because it's not out yet, but another month or so.
This is good.
I don't think it's going to come out. It's going to have to escape, that book.
Yeah. But he's had 75 years in show business. I mean, and he's met so many people. He's been a part of so much. So when you read the book, it's his life story, but it's also a collection of anecdotes. And the people that come through there, Louis Armstrong, Louis Prima, Frank Sinatra, Tiny Tim, Buddy Rich, all these people had.
I know all those guys.
Dean Martin.
Part of it.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
Yeah, see, that was a beautiful time.
And
Dean Martin, let me just we were on a Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis telethon.
Oh, yeah?
So it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and Dean Martin was supposed to introduce us. He didn't know me from Adam at that time, but I had a good 5-piece band. So he was standing in front of me. He says, oh, I got a wonderful band. He said, I know you're going to love them. Good friends of mine. I know you're going to love this band. Stay right there. And he rang me. I said, what's the name of the band? So I said, it's written on the front of my drums. And he says, what, do you expect me to read at 3 o'clock in the morning? Like, very fun.
But John, Lenny's big claim to fame, though, was Spike Jones. If anybody remembers, Spike Jones was a comedy band. It was very popular in those years, and Lenny had a band called the Cracker Jacks. And they were a top comedy band, and that was the story. He wound up with Spike Jones.
1958, I was having macaroni at my mother's house. Phone rang. He says, Len, I met him in Reno just before that, okay, at Harold's Club. Harold was a Spike Jones buff. He said, will you do an extra show tonight? Because I want my friend Spike Jones to see you guys. Come up and saw us. I didn't see any more after that until this was in November of '57. In May of '58, I get a call, Len Carrie there at my mother's house having macaroni. Yeah, he says, this is Spike, how the heck are you? I says, who do I know named Spike? I said, Spike Jones? He says, yeah. I said, you in New York? He said, no, I'm calling you from Beverly Hills. He says, listen, I'm going to take over the Dean Martin show for the summer, Club Oasis, and I'd like you to be on the show. Believe me, John, that's the best way in the world to get hired.
Oh, forget about it.
When they call you.
I closed my eyes a little. You sound a little like George Burns. Did anyone ever tell you that?
George Burns, yeah, one of my favorites, okay? I don't know if I'll ever reach 100, though.
What about Elvis? You ever meet him?
Yes, I met Elvis.
Yeah? That's awesome. So you came from a time that was...
Wonderful guy, great talent, too.
Yeah?
Good-looking guy, too. Oof.
Oh, he was a very good-looking guy.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's great. So
Had
what's
dinner with Frank Sinatra. When with Spike Jones, when I was with him,
Mm-hmm.
we were going to do one of his records on one of the shows, Bewitched, Those Fingers in My Hair, and I was Cinderella's fairy godfather. I was dressed in Frankenstein monster, and we had to get his permission. So I don't know, Dino and Frank had a restaurant in Beverly Hills called Dino's.
Okay.
And when Frank was in New York, he was at Jilly's. And when he was in California, he was at Dino's. So Spike and his wife were going to have dinner. He said, you want to come along? So I said, sure. So that's how I met Frank. We had dinner with him, and he's a gentleman, really a nice guy. I know what people say about him. He's a nice guy. And my paths crossed his a couple of times during my lifetime. Like, he was at Jilly's one time, and I happened to be there, and when he's leaving Jilly's, he says goodbye to everybody. When he came to me at the bar, he said, you look familiar. I said, man, we had dinner together.
So what are your plans with the book? You gonna do a little book signing when it's done?
Yes, tell him.
Well, we're planning to have a reception. Hopefully, it'll be sometime at the latter part of November. Make sure you're,
On the VIP.
free your calendar.
On the VIP.
Yeah. So we'll do that. And it was one of the interesting things. We rounded up some of the old guys, some of the old musicians.
That's great.
And the people we worked with and all that.
That ain't Al Lambert, is it?
That's
it
Al
is.
Lambert.
Al Lambert.
Al Lambert.
I know
Al Lambert. Al
That's
Lambert
because-
got his start in my nightclub.
No way.
The
The
Moulin
Moulin
Rouge.
Rouge.
You hear that, Al?
He was 15, 16 years old. His father was a liquor salesman.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I knew him. And he used to come in, I'd go sing with the band, go sing with the band, and that's how he started,
I've been meaning to get Al on the show for the last couple of years, but then our schedules haven't met. I didn't forget you, Al, but he's a good guy.
Tiny Tim is on there, too, another good friend of mine.
Oh, really? Which one's that on here? 'Cause I don't know
On
who
the
you look
right,
like.
upper right.
This guy?
Yeah,
That's him
Tiny
when he was
Tim.
young?
Yeah.
That's why I didn't recognize him.
Very good. Everybody laughs about Tiny Tim. I think that the show Laugh-In was responsible for being a big hit because when they first went on in '67, they had Tiny Tim on every episode, dressed in every other costume that you could imagine. If you see those old shows, he was very instrumental in making that show,
Really?
And a really good act. When he gets on stage, he does 45 minutes of socko stuff, man, I had to tell everybody says, Tiny Tim. I said, yeah, but when you see his act,
Now, listen, what late night shows were you on back in the day?
Well, Joe Franklin and I were like cousins.
Love Joe Franklin.
Yeah.
He was sitting right there where you're
when
sitting
I
right
had
now.
when I had a star, we had a star attraction, Dennis Stay from the Jack Benny show, when Andy and I were doing shows. And I called him up, because he used to interview everybody. I says, Joe, have you ever done Dennis Day? He says, no. I said, well, I got him. He says, yeah. I said, when do you want me to bring him up? He said, when you get here, he goes on. Yeah, well, you met these people. They had a commissary there. All these people were doing TV shows from Burbank, so you got to know everybody,
Yeah, a lot of people say that I met, everyone knows everybody, but then half the people really know everybody. Everybody just say, how you doing? Yeah. See you at all the events, how you doing?
Yeah.
But then everyone had their own clique, I guess. I guess things haven't changed that much.
Yeah.
So now listen, what are you doing these days? You still performing?
These days, I'm doing nothing. We just finished writing a book, and he's got me doing all kinds of public appearances.
Good.
And I'm glad to be on your show.
I appreciate it very much that you're here. Thank you.
No, I appreciate you having us on, tell you the truth. Maybe we'll sell a couple of books.
Now,
really, if anybody wants to know, there's a lot of things about Staten Island there, because I've been here all my life. I was on the road for 18 years with my band, but then I bought the nightclub.
That's crazy.
And I thought it was the best thing that I did in my life. Actually, it was the worst thing I did in my life. It was like the judge went like this. 11 years. It was like a sentence.
So you being here, I'm sure you ran into Vito Pacone, right?
Yes, Vito Pacone.
Yeah.
I know Vito, yeah.
He does a show down here,
Yeah.
good guy.
Yeah.
So good, man. Listen, when this book comes out, it'll probably be, the show will be done, but let's definitely get you guys back on when I'm back in production.
Yeah,
Would be
thanks very
nice.
much.
Would be
You know what I mean?
Appreciate that.
We'll
There's a lot of stuff in there about the nightclub days, the days when I had my band on the road for 18 years during the 50s. I had a big band. I started when I was a kid. I started when I was 6 years old. They bought me an accordion, a toy accordion for Christmas. Played the hell out of it till I was 9. And then Harry Kaplan owned a record store on Portland Avenue. He was a half-assed accordion player.
Oh, really?
So my father took me up there to have him hear me play. I was playing by ear, okay? And he said, you got to give this kid lessons. He says, he plays I was playing a toy accordion. So we got a guy named Salvatore Alvarez from Yonkers that come down every Tuesday. We got a bunch of kids in Staten Island. We started taking lessons. I studied the accordion until I was 15. Then I went to New York to see a stage show at the Paramount Theater.
Okay.
The Glenn Miller Band was performing, and I fell in love with it. And I said, boy, that's the band I got to play with. I was 15 years old. But they didn't have an accordion player. So I said, now let me see, who's the oldest looking guy in the band? The drummer. So I said, I'll learn how to play the drums, and by the time he's too old, I'll take my place. So I went home and announced to my father, I'm not going to play the accordion, I want to play the drums. Well, you should have been there that day, I'll tell you. After 6 years of lessons and an accordion, you know, so.
Yeah, I like Glenn Miller. I'm into all that music.
Yeah, he was my favorite.
Big band.
My favorite.
Well, listen.
And he died, you know, he went in service and he died in 42. I went in service in 44, got out in 46. But in 45, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and I had a big base there. I was at aviation radio school. And on the base, Tex Beneke, if you know the Glenn Miller Band, Tex Beneke did Chattanooga Choo Choo and everything. He was in the Navy, and he had a band there, and they were all rated musicians. And we had a band out of the radio men that we just got musicians together. So his drummer was going on leave, and he came and asked me to play drums with his band. So actually, I got to play with the Glenn Miller Band because he was playing all the Glenn Miller arrangements.
That's awesome.
And he says, here's the book. I said, I don't need the book. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I know all the arrangements by heart. He said, get the heck out of here. I said, well, try me, okay? Because I did. That's how I learned to play the drums, playing with Glenn Miller records, okay?
Well, listen, one day me and you got to do a full show just on your history and the stories, because we could go on all night, but unfortunately that's your time. Where could people get you guys on the internet? If they have to find you, do you have any social media connections?
We're on I'm on Facebook, and you know, I have an email, but we're on Facebook, and it'll be there.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. We got some of Lenny's some of the old clips from the Spike Jones TV show.
Okay.
We now have on YouTube.
Oh, beautiful.
You can see him doing his routines with Spike and Doodles Weaver and Billy Barty was his big part.
One little thing about Doodles
guy.
Weaver, the funniest guy in the whole world as far as I'm concerned. And he died, he committed suicide.
Oh, really?
2 shots to the chest. Now
Oh.
tell me, explain how that happens. How do you shoot yourself twice? He must have shot himself and said, geez, I missed. That's Doodles Weaver. You know, Doodles Weaver had a rubber face. He's the guy that did with Spike Jones, Hawaiian War Chant, Beetle Bomb. That was all Doodles Weaver, okay? And one of the funniest guys in the business. Billy Barty, the midget, we used to room together when we were on the road, okay?
It's crazy.
And there's a guy that's 3'9" of nothing but solid talent. The director says when we were doing the Frankenstein thing, he was the Purple People Eater. All I did was grunt as Cinderella's fairy godfather, "Arr," and she would say, "What did he say?" And the Purple Eater would tell her what he was my interpreter. You know.
Well, listen, thank you guys for coming. Len Carrie and
Thank you,
Andy
John.
Mele, everybody.
Thanks very much.
All right. Piece of nostalgia there, and check out that book.